Good evening, welcome to the February 19th meeting of the Glenville Town Board. Please rise for the invocation and pledge allegiance. For tonight's invocation, I just ask that you offer your own intentions in silence as we take a moment of silence to study ourselves. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Let the record show Councilman Martin is absent. Councilman Yurgos.
Here.
Councilman Godlewski.
Here.
Councilwoman Wierzbowski.
Here.
Supervisor Ketzler.
Here. Again, thank you all for being here tonight. We have the agendas up front. There are no add-ons or changes to the agenda, which is somewhat unusual. So we'll start with our town council reports, and I'll start on my left with Councilman Godlewski.
Just briefly that I enjoyed the trail walk on Saturday, along with the supervisor and deputy supervisor, as well as Ms. Hillis and former Councilman Hemmel. It was, you know, if we could get Congress together to go for a 4-mile walk in the woods in the cold, I think we could really end gridlock in Washington. It's always a fun event. It was well attended and promotes the use of our trail system, which I think is fantastic. So really enjoyed that. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Councilwoman Wierzbowski.
I would echo Councilman Godlewski's comments that we had a really nice time on the trail walk. It was pretty frigid, but the weather was beautiful, and we moved at a brisk clip, and it was lovely. I believe that all the fire departments within the town of Glenville have completed their installation banquets, and I would like to offer congratulations, best wishes, and safe years to the newly inducted chief officers. On the 27th, I will be meeting most of them, if not all of them, at the next town chiefs meeting, so I'll report back then if I have any news. And lastly, I would like to extend a happy birthday to my husband, Ed, who could not be with us. He's home doing birthday things, so.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Ed. Let him know we all send our best. Councilman Yurgos.
I have nothing tonight.
Excellent. So we will move on to the public hearing we have scheduled for tonight regarding local law regarding the Freemansbridge zoning district with accompanying design guidelines and the zoning map amendments to the code of Glenville. I will open that public hearing up. I'd ask Melissa, I know we didn't have a chance to talk today. Can you just come up and just give a quick overview on that?
One of those surprises, don't you?
Yeah, I know. I just got off the road, so we didn't have a chance to talk.
No surprises.
So just a quick overview on the Freemansbridge Road new zoning district.
Okay, well, the purpose of it was, we got trifold, so you have an area that had a number of zoning districts, and it even overlapped. One parcel might have several districts on it. A second purpose to it was to streamline what the uses were for that area. And a third was to make it pedestrian friendly, so that when we put in the multi-use path along Freemansbridge Road, that it will, the buildings will match in scale and approachability for bicyclists and pedestrians that are heading up Freemansbridge Road. This hopefully then becomes somewhat of a gathering place for residents.
And I think the point of the zoning change is to really get more in line with the comprehensive plan, with the Freemansbridge Road master plan, and to try to encourage more of a mixed use, less maybe retail and more out to entertainment, residential type of district.
Absolutely, and those all include a lot of public hearings and charrettes and forums and this also.
You've been at it a while.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wish to be heard on that matter? Public hearing is open. Going once? Yes.
Hi, Sue Boothman, 6391 Green Corners Road. I thought that there would be a map for people to look at to see what you're doing, but I don't see one except for what's here, which is not very helpful in terms of actually being able to see anything. So I don't know, but my understanding from my previous position on the DECC was that part of what was done in the rezoning was that areas that had previously been zoned as conservation areas in and around wetlands where that conservation status was being removed, So they are effectively being treated as everything else and potentially being open for development as part of this new zoning district. And that, I object to that if that's what's going on. That bothers me, and I don't see any good reason or explanation for doing that. So I don't know if you want to say anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind addressing that. My understanding is, yes, this zone will be placed over all the different zones currently there. One of them will be in conservation. But the ones on Freeman's Bridge Road that are in the conservation zone are wetlands exclusively. So it's kind of a duplicative zoning where we can't develop on the wetlands anyway. So having that conservation zone is really irrelevant because you're already protected by the wetlands. So we didn't understand why it would make sense to carve out more zones out of this overlay. No, it's not an overlay, we say that a lot. This new zone district, because the goal is to make it one unified district. So they're protected by the wetlands anyway, that conservation zoning area that you saw previously. So it's 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other, basically. It's still protected land.
It's protected by state law. It's no longer protected by the town of Glenville. So I guess I still don't see, I mean, it essentially would be a few clicks in the GIS to clip out another layer and leave those designations as conservation areas intact.
If it were that easy, then that's something we could probably do, but it would require us to go back to square one, to go through the public hearing again, to go through the whole thing, and another 6 months down the road, for no reason, because it's already protected by wetland.
Well, that doesn't remove my objection, but thank you for explaining it.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? Going once, going twice, seeing none. Public hearing is now closed. Next public hearing we have is the public hearing on amendments to the parking section of our code 270-73 entitled Parking. We'll open that public hearing now. And this is a public hearing that will address the issues for off-street parking standards. Again, Melissa, I don't know if you want to give just a quick overview on this.
So the parking amendment is really to clarify and streamline. We had broken out the parking down to how many holes of golf we were actually playing, so we just thought shrinking it down would make sense and be more user-friendly for development.
Thank you.
And for the record, we don't have any golf courses.
Not yet. Not yet. I'm trying. Anyone wish to be heard on this matter? Parking standards, going once, going twice. Seeing none, that public hearing is now closed. Now move to privilege of the floor. We have nobody signed up, but we will open privilege of the floor. Anyone wish to be heard of privilege of the floor? It's now open. Going once, going twice. Seeing none, privilege of the floor is now closed. We'll move to the supervisor's comments to the board. And I'll try to be somewhat brief, because I know it's a birthday to get to. Yes, got cake. I'll get to. But I do want, I see Chief Janix here, and one of the things I talked about in January, I'm going to do one meeting a month to talk a little bit about our history through our 200th anniversary. So I want to talk briefly. February's focus is the police department, which is kind of neat because a lot of folks really think the police department started in 1968. Now, if I get anything wrong, Chief, don't start yelling out from the audience, just let it go. But a lot of people think it started in 1968, and officially it did start in 1968. But the Glenville Police Department actually dates back to the 30s as volunteers, which is kind of neat. We had an auxiliary police force here in the town of Glenville, again, all volunteers. The first chief, who was not named chief until 1945 as a part-time chief, was Chief William Groh. So a lot of folks think that the first chief was in 1968, but we actually had a part-time chief in 1945. During the 40s, our police department was known as the Glenville Civil Defense Police Department during World War II. So they were used as civil defense force against whatever might have happened domestically during the war. After the war, the Glenville Police Department evolved into what was called the Glenville Special Police Unit of the Sheriff's Department in 1950, part of the Deputy Sheriff's Association. At that time, and this is kind of interesting to where we are today, that was the nucleus of the 20-man department that was formed in 1968. We had 20 people serving this town during the 1950s. Today, we have 24. Now, people say, well, you haven't grown that much. You had about 30,000, because our population explosion, like most suburbs, was after the war. GIs coming back, homes, GE growing. So we grew in the 1940s, 1950s. We had roughly 30,000 people back then. We have roughly 30,000 people today. So a lot of people say, well, that makes sense. But when you look, as we look through the history center up there, Joan and I, 1977, they reported 6,000 calls in the town of Glenville. Today, you get your reports from the chief all the time. We have over 18,000 calls, 3 times the amount of calls that they received in 1977, almost the same manpower, which I think is kind of interesting. So Chief Grote served in the capacity of police chief until 1950. He was summarily and quickly dismissed by the Glenville Town Board, unfortunately, for what they said at the time was health reasons. He did pass away shortly after that. After Grote's dismissal, Chief Pitcher was hired as the first full-time police officer. He was on the police force since 1951, and that by the time he was chief, we only had 2 police cars, and we just started our 24-hour contiguous patrol in 1968. That's when we officially became a police department. After Pitcher retired in 1975, I'm going to have a hard time with this name, William Presblack, was named chief. And then after, and I'm not sure when Chief Presblack retired. Yeah, not sure either. We're working on that one. But then it was Chief Purdy after that. During Chief Purdy's time here, from 1978 to 2004, when Chief Purdy took over in 1978, our police department budget was $296,000. Today it's $2 million. So we've seen growth in calls, we've seen growth in a lot of things. Chief Purdy retired in 2004. Dan Boyle was hired in 2005, but left by 2006. I think some of you might remember that. Mike Rinaldi was hired in 2006 as the department's 5th chief. And today, as of 2016, we have the esteemed Chief Janik running the department, as you all know. So today, our 24-member force is, as I said, responds to over 18,000 calls. The village has an additional 13 members serving Scotia, and as I said, our department has about a $2 million budget. So I thought it was kind of interesting. There's a little fact sheet on it. There's some kind of really cool pictures of some of the old days with the police department. Officer Dan Moffitt is featured here as well. We have a ton of pictures that we're going to be trying to get out, maybe online or something from the police department over the years. But again, it's just kind of an interesting little thing. Next, in March, we're working on the fire service now, so you might be interested in that. And I'll tell you why they have that tower. And you probably already know this, don't give it away, but why they have the tower over in the Glenville Hill Fire Department.
I won't give it away.
Kind of interesting, but you know it, don't you?
Of course I do.
Yeah. Don't give it away.
I won't give it.
Just a quick couple updates, and I want to talk a little bit because I just got back from the Association of Towns Conference over the past couple of days. I do want to let you know, get some things on your calendar. Bulk pickup is set. We met with Tammy and I, and Dana met with County Waste. Zone 1 is going to start on March 22nd. We're going to again zone the towns into 3 zones. Each zone will be 1 week, and that will be it. So March 22nd will be Zone 1. They'll move to Zone 2 on March 29th, and then Zone 3 on April 5th. If you can think of the town from east to west, those are the zones. So eastern part of the town is Zone 1 to Second Avenue, or Sweater Town.
Zone 1 is the entire right-hand side of Route 50.
Oh, just to Route 50.
Right, the whole right-hand side of
east side of Route 50, north. Zone 2 will be those on the west part of 52 to Sac. Yeah. And then Zone 3 will be Sac out to West Bend. So that's how that will work. Same rules will apply as have applied. We'll get information on the website. We'll get stuff out as very quickly. I know we're working on that now, so people have plenty of time. We did settle on the work session schedule. So the work schedule, as part of our Celebrate 200, we're going to take our work sessions into the community. April 8th will be at the Dutch Reformed Church in Scotia. June 10th will be at the West Glenville Church in the hamlet of West Glenville. On July 8th, we'll be at the All Claus Fire Department in the hamlet of All Claus. And October 14th, we'll be at Pukendall Fire Department. So please plan accordingly. We're going to try to take this road show out on the road, see what happens, and hopefully we'll get some folks there. And we'll try to think of some special things to do, maybe that are germane to the area that we're in. One of the things, we also had an opportunity, Vicki and I, to meet with the History Committee. We're really pushing on this 200 tree initiative. We have pretty much 98% set on what's happening here. And I'm not sure this exact spreadsheet is right yet, but we'll take a look at it some more. But we sat down and we picked out the areas where we're going to plant the trees. This is going to be quite an undertaking, so we're going to need all hands on deck. Obviously, I've been working also with Dana and Tom and Mike and the Highway Department on making sure they help us get the holes dug, because we're going to be putting 5-6 footers in. These aren't just like little trees. They're going to make an impression immediately. So just very quickly, they're going to go in all our parks. Obviously, they're going to go on all of our properties as well. But in Indian Meadows, we have planting by the softball field, 18 scarlet oaks, and we're also going to plant, although we have a meeting on this later next week, on the hillside in the park, 10 crab apples. So what we did is we made sure, and Melissa was at the meeting too, by the way. So thank you, Melissa.
That's all right.
Seats on me. We made sure we got native trees, number one, and we also try to go heavy on pollinators, because there's a need for that. And Melissa helped us understand through our tree inventory which of the trees we're heavy on and which we're light on, so we're going to try to get trees that are needed. In Melwick, we're going to plant 14 river birch and 4 honey locusts. On the bike path, we're going to plant 15 cat sur. What kind of tree is that? I don't know. It's a nice tree though. But it's going to go all the way along that bike path between Freeman's Bridge and Scotia. So we're going to try to tree line. We're trying to make an impression so people can look and say that's Bicentennial Row or something like that. We are going to gift, I'm sending a letter tomorrow, we're going to gift to each fire department and each school within the town of Glenville a bicentennial tree. So those are 16 crab apples that will go out into the community, as long as the schools and the fire departments will take them. And we hope that they put a plaque there that says, bicentennial tree given by the town of Glenville, celebration of 200. We are then going to help us preserve some of the cost of this, we're going to go to DEC and buy 1 to 2 footers. And those are going to go in Anderson Park. We're going to line the Hilltop Trail with pine. In Melwick, we're going to do another 10 spruce. And then what we're going to do is offer 100 trees. So that really takes care of 100 plantings, all the ones I just talked about. We're going to offer 100 trees to our residents to buy if they wanted to put a bicentennial tree in their yard. So we'll have a couple 5-footers. They'll be more expensive. They'll probably be like $60, somewhere in there. And we'll have a bunch of 1 to 2 footers that will be probably $20 or something like that. But we'll have an order form going out shortly and ask our residents to kind of take part in this too. If you guys have any ideas or thoughts as to where you want some trees, or you think you know where some trees might want to go, let us know. But I know we already sold like 4 trees without even starting the sales yet, so we're getting there. You'll take another 5. 5 foot. You might add a tree for his birthday.
Yes.
See?
You can plant
And just real quick, I want to give you a quick update on my time at the Association of Towns. It was a busy conference, a lot going on. The theme of their conference is right up my alley: keep government local. New York is a home rule state. Let's keep it that way. And really, there's a lot of attacks on home rule going on in Albany right now. There's some specific things that we really spend a lot of time talking about. Number one is cannabis. So if cannabis is going to be legalized, which it probably is, there's some best practices across the nation on the 14 states that did it. And there's some worst practices. And unfortunately, our state is going down the worst practice road. Right now, they're fighting over revenue amongst themselves. So we don't know if they're going to get anything passed because they can't decide how to spend the money. But one of the things that we want to make sure what we're advocating for, if it does pass, local rules should come into play. And right now, a local government doesn't have the opportunity to opt out of the law if they wanted to. So, for example, in Colorado, the local boards all had to approve cannabis in their community. There are some towns, just like there are dry towns, still in New York State, with alcohol. There are some towns that opted not to be into it. New York State does not allow that right now. Secondly, there's no provision for local governments to share in the revenue. So we're really concerned about that. Many of the states allow for the local governments a portion of the revenue because a lot of the impact is on the local level. So it's not just about a cash grab by the state government in some of these states. It's about making sure the local government has some revenue too. Currently, that's not in the proposal. The second one is kind of a small matter, you would think, but again, it's an erosion of home rule. E-scooters and e-bikes. So they're looking at allowing for e-scooters and e-bikes to be allowed in communities, but they're giving all the control to the county, not the local governments. So a county can opt out wholly, or they can allow it wholly, but a local government can't have a say in it. And again, the revenue from those e-scooters and e-bikes all go to the county, nothing going to the local government. So the state government is really starting to strangle local government as far as revenue is concerned, as far as any type of control. The third issue is wireless, small wireless 5G. So 5G is being rolled out. You know, they look like pizza boxes they put them on top of telephone poles every 1,000 feet. The FCC issued an order that capped the revenue local government can get, that capped it, that exempted it from zoning. Everything is exempt from local control. They can come in and pretty much do as they please by the FCC order. The FCC order is currently being litigated, and it looks like it's going to get overturned. But our great state of New York has decided to put in a budget bill to exempt local governments from any control over the 5G implementation. And their rationale is that they're trying just to solidify in state law what the FCC has already ordered. They know well enough that that probably is going to get overturned. So even if it gets overturned and this gets through the budget, we will have no control over this, and we'll have no ability to get any more revenue off of what the state says we can potentially get. We see that as an erosion of local control. The fourth issue is very quiet, but very troubling for local control, and it's in the budget bill. And the one thing we're starting to see now, this governor is using the budget process to implement policy. So these things are not debated on the floor, just like the so-called criminal justice reform. Nothing is debated, could not pass in the light of day in a debate on the floor, but it gets put in the budget, and that's how he's getting all of this through. But the fourth thing that people have not talked about yet, and we're starting to see this, is there's a proposal in the budget that would allow for a county-wide municipal court system. So if a county decided to suck up the local courts, the county can so do that. It's in the budget bill, and people are not familiar or not even aware. It's very silent right now. And again, the same thing holds true there. You can argue potentially efficiencies, maybe not. I think the chief could probably give you a lot of information why it's not as efficient. But what you start to see there again is local control leaving your community and going to a higher government. You your case is being adjudicated by people who aren't from your community. And that's not what that was, the intent of local courts was. So we're very, very concerned about that. And then lastly, as you can imagine, revenue came up. And so AIM, what we now call the AIM Interceptor Program, remains, where the state is no longer giving us AIM. And it's funny because AIM used to be called revenue share, because that's what it is. But now they call it AIM, and they make you think it's something other than your right to that revenue. Because the argument was sales tax, you'll like this because this is the argument we have with the county, sales tax is generated from the local level. It ought to stay largely on the local level, but the state has sucked that up. And now what they're doing is they're giving the counties, or they're making the counties share it through what they call the AIM Interceptor Program, where the state takes the internet sales tax increases, uses that to give to the municipalities for their AIM. But what they're not doing is they're not telling us what they're collecting in internet sales tax. So we don't know if the money's there or not there. Counties don't know if the money's there or not there at this point. But our argument is this: if you're going to use the sales tax, the internet sales tax now, to provide for AIM funding into municipalities, then we ought to have our proportion, our percentage of that increased as sales tax revenue increases. One thing we know about sales tax, unless you artificially keep it low or level, it grows. Inflation automatically, really pretty much, other than an economic downturn, determines that it grows. But there's no growth built in for AIM, even though the model now is based on sales tax revenue. So we had a lot of discussion around that, a lot of discussion around chips and extreme weather. Extreme weather money has been taken out of the budget, so we're going to see a $35,000 hit to our paving budget right off the bat if that stays out of the budget. But a lot of other things I can report on. I know we got cake to get to, so I'm gonna cut it short. Any questions or comments for me?
I actually have a couple of things I would like to mention, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you very much for going to that meeting. I know that you do a great job representing us, and I know that over the years you have worked your way up through that organization, and it's your voice that has oftentimes been a leader on different issues. So thank you for going and for being such an advocate for all of the towns in New York State. The first thing, going back to the cannabis, New York State has a spending problem. We don't have a revenue problem. And in my opinion, when you are looking to drugs, to close, legalizing drugs to close budget holes, that's a problem. That's a problem. And that's going to impact every single community in our state, I believe, in a negative way on a number of different levels. And for them to be passing bills like this in the budget is indicative of a much larger problem that our state government has, and that they hide behind these budget bills that are often called the big ugly, because they're just so ugly that they just include all of these different issues and things that should be talked about. Things like cannabis should be discussed. There should be much more public voice added to these types of issues. The AIM monies. That's ridiculous. I don't know exactly which version of the bill passed, but the sales tax revenue, the original bill that was out there, was based upon companies who had $100 million or more in sales every year and had an actual physical location in the state. So that's where the money was supposed to have come from. I'm not quite sure what version made it into the budget. So that's why you don't know, because it's literally a sentence in the budget. And it doesn't define any of it, and that's part of the problem that we have, is that these bills are not well defined, and they're just implemented in one big conglomeration of a budget. And I agree with you, it's not a good way to govern. I'm glad that our board is very transparent, and I'm glad that we try to get the issues out there to the residents and hear what people have to say. And I think that we have some good practices that we do on our own, just because that's what we think is the right thing to do. It's very troubling to me to see this process unfold year after year, and essentially we're losing our voice, and it's very troubling.
And to that point on cannabis, Lieutenant Hopel addressed the delegation, and in her comments, I was actually astounded by this as well. In her comments, the rationale for why we need to pass this, legalized cannabis, is, well, we're being surrounded. And so our people are going to Massachusetts and Canada, so why don't we keep that revenue here? So it's clearly about revenue. Clearly, this isn't a health issue, this isn't a safety issue, this isn't any other issue other than they see those dollars leaving the state and they need them. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous policy.
It's a very slippery slope. It's a very slippery slope for a government to go down when you're doing things like that. It's astonishing to me when you really start to think about the impact that that will have on every single local community. And I don't think it's going to be a good one either.
I agree. Anything else? Thank you. So, back to the agenda, we're on to item number 9, a resolution appointing Tyler Kaluba to the position of police officer. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Move second and third. Before we discuss it, Chief, I don't know, I'll throw another surprise. I don't know if you want to speak about Taylor at all, Tyler, sorry. Tyler, and why this is happening.
Sure. I knew I was going to speak, but I addressed it more. I apologize. Tyler was interviewed back when we interviewed Michelle Ariola for the position of police officer. At that point in time, we usually rank the officers who we interview. Tyler was ranked second. Unfortunately, at that point in time, we only had one position open, so we hired Michelle, who just graduated from the police academy and is now in field training. Tyler was, fortunately enough for him, hired by the Schenectady Police Department and began his field training. Went through the academy with Michelle and graduated in January, early January. He's now in field training with Schenectady Police Department. Though he was hired out the same Schenectady County Civil Service list that we hired Michelle off of, we contacted Schenectady County Civil Service. They have a commission meeting tomorrow evening to approve the lateral transfer application, which we understand there probably no problems with that. So with that in mind, he is pretty much almost done with his field training. We'll just have to suit him up and get him on the road as soon as he gets here with a little bit of our own training, and he'll be ready to go. So it really is nice to have someone that we can hire immediately to replace a vacancy instead of waiting a 6-month period for the academy and up to 12 weeks for field training. So this is a real positive thing, and it's fortunate for us that we have him. He's also a hometown kid. And has said in his initial interview and his secondary interview with me, that this is his dream job. So we're really happy about getting him.
Thank you. Councilwoman, you're the sponsor from
Thank you, Chief, for explaining all of that. I'm excited to see that we have another Glenville resident who wants to serve on our police force, and I believe this is now the third hire that you have that has said that their aspiration was to be a Glenville police officer. So that is kudos to you and the department and all the work that you're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
I think it's fantastic that we have somebody from local kid coming in and becoming a police officer. That's great.
Yeah, and this, he's someone I know personally, and I think he's going to do a great job for you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, please record the vote.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 10, authorizing the town of Glenville Fire Departments to construct and operate LED signage. Do I have a motion?
I'll move
Do I
it.
have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this resolution is in connection with our zoning laws and the construction and operation of LED signs in connection with fire district property. I'm not going to read the entire resolution, but the long and short of it is this is providing a path for our local fire departments to purchase, construct, and operate LED signs without proceeding through the entire planning board process. We have followed all our due diligence. We've spoken with the fire departments to try to make sure that they understand that a key portion of the legislation is that they have to stay within the current zoning laws. They cannot apply for or go outside of what the zoning says as far as size and placement and brightness and all of that, but it does give them a little bit of an easier path to constructing these LED signs that can be very useful for them. especially in times of emergency.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I'll just say that I'm glad to see that we're doing this. It is going to be a good public safety tool for the fire departments, for the individual fire departments. They're going to have the opportunity to get out a message that they need to get out in a hurry and in a good way.
Thank you. Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Kessler?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 11, determining an unlisted seeker action for the proposed storage facility on Amsterdam Road within the storage overlay district. Do I have a motion?
I'll move
Do
it.
I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. This is a, again, determination of a negative seeker. You have the resolution. It's a long resolution in front of you, so I'm not going to read it all. But if you have any questions, I know Melissa's here and she's worked on that determination. Any questions or comments on the seeker determination for the proposed storage unit project in the storage overlay district?
I think it should be noted that some of the comments that were offered at the public hearing were included in this resolution, such as the originally planned 24-hour service has been amended by the applicant to require scheduling visitors who want to use the facility after 10 p.m. and before 6 a.m. I think that was a key concern of one of the gentlemen who spoke, and I think that's a good compromise.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. I think what we heard from Bob, and I've talked to him since, it's still, a lot of his concerns revolve around what I would call site plan issues, lighting, how the lighting is going to be, fencing. He still wants to see fencing around the entire project. But those really, I don't think, are issues too much for us. Those are more site plan issues. He does, I guess one issue we should just, because he couldn't make it tonight, so he wanted me to talk about this. He does not believe it fits the character. Everyone has a different view on that one, but he does still have that feeling. But, Amsterdam Road, Route 5, whatever you want to refer to it, it's kind of unique, and it has some unique challenges to it. We've tried to do some things down there, it hasn't worked. It's a corridor, and I think it seems to fit the character of the area. So, any other questions or comments on this? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Kessler?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 12 is the resolution approving the zoning amendment for the West Glenville Storage Facility on Amsterdam Road. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second. As we just discussed, this is the actual resolution that would allow for the storage overlay district to be applied in the highway commercial zone on Route 5. After we had the seeker full environmental assessment reviews we just went through, and so this would allow us to allow this to be in the zone.
Let me just say that this is the very reason we did the storage overlay district in the first place, was to get development like this done. So it makes sense for us to go forward with it.
Correct. And the other thing I point out is I think you pointed out last meeting, was each of these are individually reviewed by the town board, so it's not just an open season on a concentration of these things happening in one area. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, that's an important point to make. It's a good way to have a check and a balance on something like this, so that it doesn't become an area where just those types of things are located.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Kessler?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 13, determining a type 1 seeker action for the proposed Freeman's Bridge Road zoning district. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second, as we heard earlier, that at the public hearing, that this is a proposal for a new zoning district on Freeman's Bridge Road. We heard from Melissa the reasons why we want to do this and what we actually accomplish with this. And so this is the seeker determination before we could actually enact the law. I do have a motion.
Second.
Yeah, and I do have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Supervisor Capson?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 14, adopting local law 3 of 2020, adding a new section to 270, known as the Freemansbridge Road zoning district, with accompanying design guidelines and zoning amendments to the code of the town of Glenville. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
A second.
I'll second.
Moved in second. So this is the actual change to the district that we've been talking about on a few different points tonight. Any other questions or comments?
Just to say that this is something that's come from a lot of work by the different committees. There was multiple meetings with the residents and the business owners in the area. And it's important that we get a plan in place so that we can continue to make that corridor what we want it to be, what it should be.
I agree, and I know GECC was one that worked on it, a lot of them, but really, Jim Martin's not here tonight, but his leadership on the Code Review Committee, Melissa, her work, Councilman Galuski.
Councilman Galuski.
Yeah, when you said that, I sat there through him with you. It's just a lot of hard work, and it's important work though, so thank you to everyone for all they've done to get us to where we are. Took us a while, but we're here. Any other questions or comments? Just one more thing. I just want to say, this is an important piece of the jigsaw puzzle on Freemansbridge Road. I almost neglected to point that out. You know, Freeman's is our focus for 2020 and beyond, actually. And this is an important change. It's going to help us with the complete streets, with the pedestrian stuff we're doing, with the new design standards. Jim is going to be talking about potentially new marketing opportunity for trying to get folks to come into Freeman's Road. This is all starting to come together, but this is like the bedrock first step for us. I just want to point that out because I think it's a significant place we are here, and just for posterity, point that out.
No, you're right, Mr. Supervisor, and I'm glad that you did point that out. The whole Freemansbridge Road corridor is such a puzzle piece of so many different moving parts and the different boards and committees, like you said, that have worked on this to have a comprehensive, take the 30,000-foot view and the 30-foot view and to step back and see the long process and to be able to zero in on the different. It's actually pretty amazing exercise in government that, when you think about it, is impressive. So.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Goodlisten?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Capson?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 15, adopting local law number 4 of 2020, amending the zoning chapter 270-73, parking, with the Schedule A, as you can see on the agenda, on the resolution, although it's not there. Oh, wait a minute.
Is it back?
Wait a minute. Nope, still not there. But that's okay.
Schedule is in the back, I think it's the table.
It's not attached to the
Not on the
resolution.
actual resolution. I have it.
Oh, I'm gonna pass it
Oh,
on.
that's okay. All right. So, we've talked about this a few times tonight. Do I have a motion? Did I get a motion?
No.
No. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. So Schedule A is being distributed now, but you guys have seen this in the work session. Way down there, we got a arrow makeup on you. Any questions or comments on it?
I just wanted to, kind of going along with the prior resolution, just also acknowledge Planning for Places. They were our consultant on this revision board, and they did a ton of work on this as well, along with the many different stakeholders and entities that helps. But this really, this along with the Freemansbridge overlay was just kind of more out of the genesis of this exhaustive kind of line by line work going through the code with a kind of a red pen and seeing areas that we could just make a little more user friendly.
And if you can believe it, the process actually started years prior to that during the comprehensive process. So we've been wrestling with this thing for a long time.
But I think it's also important to note that, yes, we have been, but things like this should not be done in a quick manner. That's why we have a process. If Jim were here, I'm sure he would say the process has a place, and that's how it should be. It should be a well-reasoned, well-considered change to any part of our zoning code. And, you know, yes, it's exhaustive, and yes, it takes a long time, but I think that that's where the good changes come, so.
I would second that. Anytime we're talking about code reform, it really should be a long kind of drawn-out process and something that we take very carefully. We're changing the law, so I agree.
I'll just say that I'll let you guys talk about zoning reform. I'll talk about some other things.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please go to.
Councilman Aragosa.
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski.
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski.
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley.
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 16, authorizing the purchase of some dump trucks. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, the highway superintendent has informed the town board that the highway department is in need of purchasing 2 new dump/plow trucks for the highway department to replace one 1995 and one 2004 dump plow trucks, which have reached the end of their useful life. This resolution would recommend the purchase of two 2021 Volvo models to best meet the needs of the town. They will be purchased under state contract. And the funding for the dump truck purchases in the amount of $455,000 was included in the 2020 adopted capital budget. So should this resolution pass, it would authorize the highway superintendent to purchase essentially 2 2021 Volvo model dump trucks with specifications and additional options as included in the quote provided to the highway superintendent at New York State contract pricing from Beat Max Sales Service Inc. In East Syracuse in a sum not to exceed, well, one part of the resolution is for $237,000, and then the second truck is another $218,000. So they're essentially the same trucks.
10-wheeler and a 6-wheeler.
10-wheeler and a 6-wheeler, only 2 differences. The equipment, should this resolution pass, would authorize payment for such equipment through the issuance of bond anticipation notes for these 2 vehicles, and additionally, the 2 dump trucks that are, dump plow trucks that are deemed beyond their usable life, declared surplus property, and can be disposed of by the comptroller.
You see what 4 extra wheels cost you?
Goodness. Must be big wheels.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please go to.
Councilman Aragosa.
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski.
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski.
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley.
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 17, authorizing the funding to improvements to Indian Meadows Park. Do I have a motion?
I'll second it.
Moved in second. So we got a motion and a second. Just to start the conversation, as you know, in recent years, the town board here has made it a priority to improve the park system for the benefit of our residents and visitors. And we've done a lot over the years in the park systems. It's listed there in the resolution. Created the Anderson Park, constructed a second entrance at Melwick, new playing fields, permanent pavilions, restroom, the list goes on and on. The Park Planning Commission has also identified a second entrance at the Indian Meadows Park as a priority among its list of recommendations it provides to us annually. And we concur. Obviously, as we went through the budget process, we did put into our capital budget, approved capital budget, the cost of a phased, the first 2 phases of a roadway construction in Indian Meadows Park, which are total $250,000. This is 2 of 4 phases within the park that will eventually get us out to Drom's Road for a second entrance. It's been noted even for public safety that this second entrance is needed. This project would get us conceivably through down softball to football, but not back up towards Drom's yet. That would be phase 2 and 3 apparently, or I'm sorry, 3 and 4 in future years. But this does give us the opportunity to get halfway through the project, which has been a long time discussed and wanted. And also, the Commissioner of Public Works has indicated that this work can be done without disruption, or maybe little disruption to park activities going forward. And this would be a paved roadway as we're moving towards in our parks, all paved roads, and would be the section of the winding gravel roadbed would eventually become a walking path, which goes back around what used to be soccer back there, and where Bicentennial Road is going along that walking path with the trees. Any questions or comments?
make this happen. If you've ever had the displeasure of walking your dogs along the, as it's stated in the resolution, winding gravel roadbed while football's letting out, the dust cloud is overwhelming. So this will be a great addition to the parks, and I'm extremely pleased to see this happening.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I think it should just be noted that since Vicki has taken over the management of our park system, she's done a really fantastic job. There are several large projects that you have had to oversee, and from all accounts, you've been doing a wonderful job of keeping all the ducks in a row and making sure you stay on top of things. And I would like to thank you because it's no small feat. You just seem to handle it, and I'm sure you have days where you want to tear your hair out, but you just keep your eye on the ball. I'd like to thank you for that, because I'm sure it's not just you, but I know that you're kind of spearheading all of it. So thank you very much for your efforts.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please report the vote.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Capson?
Yes, resolution passes. So we just did two very important resolutions. Now we have to do the resolution to pay for it. Resolution 18, if this fails, the other two fail too, by the way, just so you know. Resolution 18, authorizing the issuance of serial bonds for $805,000 for the installation of the roadway we just talked about and for the purchase of the trucks. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? This is again, the issuance of the bond that's going to take care of all those purchases we just talked about. And it's a lengthy, Earl must have wrote this one, lengthy resolution, so we're not going to read it all. A lawyer wrote this one.
That would be John Minow.
Oh, no, that's right, okay, that's
Bonds.
That's bonds, yes. So this is actually a 5-year ban, right?
Well, it's a ban.
Ban, yeah. But not to exceed 5 years, right? Bans don't exceed 5 years?
That's correct. Yeah, technically it's a bond, but we treat it as a bond anticipation.
So any other, and you won't know the interest rate until you go out.
Mid-March.
Any other questions or comments?
I think it should be noted that due to the work of our comptroller and our budget team, this is why we can do things like this. $805,000 is no small sum, but the financial management of the town over the last several years has put us in a position where we're able to ease into these things and stay under the tax cap and give the residents the improvements and the services that they want and that they deserve. And so thank you to all who are involved in every aspect of managing finances for the town.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please report the vote.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Capson?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 19, approving the town of Glenville independently audited financial statements. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second. As you know, we have to have our finances audited independently, and we just ended the fiscal year December 31st, 2018 on this audit. And this is the audit from the CPA firm that was hired. And we do this, as you know, every year. Any questions or comments?
I'd just like to thank you for this nice book that I get to read later.
I'll help you sleep.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Capson?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 20, declaring certain equipment and vehicles as surplus. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second. As you can see, there's a list of some equipment that is being replaced. There are some very old 2004 Ford F-350 and some others that are being replaced, so we are surplusing the equipment. Any questions or comments?
Let's just hope we can hold out and get as much as we can for a month.
Yes.
Did you get $805,000 for this stuff? That would be fantastic.
I think the word in the miscellaneous and obsolete Prevent us from getting much
That might
money.
be,
One
maybe
man's-
800
One man's garbage is another man's gold.
What you find obsolete, someone else will pay a lot for.
One lucky scratch off the way.
Positive thinking.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please vote.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Kessler?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 21, scheduling a public hearing on March 4th here at the Glenville Town Hall regarding a petition for the extension of sewer district number 9 to include 19 Maple Avenue within the town of Glenville. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second, just to clear up some confusion, this property is the former L&A property on Maple, which is now owned by another owner, Charlie Schaefer. They did run a lateral, and so by running a lateral, they would have to be in the district, and that's what this petition is for.
Great.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please report.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Kessler?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 22, approving the monthly departmental reports for January 2020. Do I have a motion?
I'll move
Do I
it.
have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please report.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Kessler?
Yes, resolution passes. We're on to new business. I'll start on my left, with Councilman Galuski.
No new business.
Councilman Rosowski. Councilman Aragosa.
No new business.
The only thing I want to get on your calendar, and I have not been able to get a firm date yet, but it is going to be either July 17th or July 18th is going to be the town's 200th formal gala. We've got it worked out. It's going to be at a hangar at ESAM, so it can accommodate a lot of people. It's a cool venue. It's not going to be a hangar dance. I know a lot of people think it's a hangar dance when they hear that. It's not a 1940s hangar dance. It's going to be more of a formal gala. We have a committee working on transforming the hangar into a cool space. Hopefully have a nice night. It's a beautiful venue when they open the doors and you have the open air. And, they're working on getting a headliner band and a lot of good stuff you're going to start hearing about. It's going to either be that Friday night or that Saturday night. There's a debate right now over formal galas. Do people go on Fridays or they go on Saturdays? Anyone have an opinion on that before we?
That's right up Councilman Aragosa's alley.
Well, my opinion would be Saturday. Just because people work Fridays and Saturdays.
To get to it, yeah.
They get a better out.
Saturdays are for weddings.
Not that I work every day, but most people.
Yeah, Saturday, I'm here.
Saturday, I think Saturday. That's
Yeah,
a
I
little
think
better.
that would be.
Turn out
You have
Saturday.
an opinion on this one, Counselor?
Legally, it should.
Legal. What's a better legal day? Saturday. Linda?
Saturday.
Saturday. Everyone Saturday, raise your hands. All right, so we'll get information on this pretty quickly. We've got a lot of work to do on it, but it's going to be a nice night. So that's all I have. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move it.
I'll second. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?